He saved lives in war. But who saved him from the streets? An elderly man entered the courtroom in handcuffs, his face etched with time. "Your name?" the clerk asked, voice trembling. He replied, "Lucian Dubo, Sergeant, United States Marine Corps." No one could have predicted what would unfold. Minutes later, as Judge Sophia Logan reviewed his file, her face paled. That name belonged to the man who had saved her brother's life in Fallujah before making the ultimate sacrifice. Respect if you believe honor doesn't fade with poverty or age. Lucian Dubo, 69, sat in the defendant's chair, shoulders slumped under a faded military jacket 2 sizes too large. Harsh neon lights highlighted deep wrinkles carved by time and hardship. Decades ago, he stood tall in his dress blues, medals gleaming. Today, he awaited sentencing in clothes scavenged from a shelter's donation bin. The clerk called Case 47B, City vs. Lucian Dubo, public disturbance, trespassing, resisting arrest. Lucian rose, movements stiff from arthritis and old, unhealed wounds from Vietnam and Iraq. Visible and invisible scars carried silently for decades. "Mr. Dubo," the prosecutor began, a young man in a tailored suit. "You've been warned repeatedly about loitering behind Jefferson Street Cafe." What he omitted, Lucian only sat quietly near the cafe's dumpster, warming himself by the kitchen's heat vent during freezing nights. He never begged, never bothered anyone, just sought fleeting warmth when December temperatures plummeted. Officer Jack Morrow testified next. "I found the defendant behind the cafe at 11:45 p.m. He refused to leave when ordered." In truth, Lucian had only asked for 5 more minutes to finish a half sandwich the cook had quietly given him. Arguing seemed futile then and now. "This is the defendant's 3rd citation this year," the prosecutor continued. "We recommend community service and a 30-day ban from the downtown commercial district. Such a ban would cut Lucian off from the 4th Street shelter, his only warm bed in months, and the Tuesday and Thursday meals at St. Luke's Church. It meant isolation in the dead of winter." "Mr. Dubo," Judge Sophia Logan addressed him directly, "do you have representation today?" Lucian shook his head. The public defender was tied up elsewhere. "Do you wish to make a statement?" she asked, peering over her half-moon glasses. Lucian cleared his throat, his voice hoarse. "No excuses, Your Honor. Just trying to stay warm." "Any particular reason you chose that spot?" the judge pressed, a faint glimmer in her stern eyes. "The cook, Etienne, sometimes leaves food." Lucian hesitated. "I've known him since he was a kid. His father served with me in Desert Storm." "And your military service?" Judge Logan asked, though such details were typically irrelevant. "United States Marine Corps, 1965 to 1995, Gunnery Sergeant, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines in Iraq," Lucian replied automatically, a flicker of pride cutting through his fog. The judge scribbled a note, then paused, her attention caught by something in Lucian's file. Before she could speak, the courtroom doors swung open. A distinguished man, in an expensive suit, strode to the public defender's table. "Your Honor, Antoine Rossi for the defendant. I apologize for the interruption, but I've been retained to represent Mr. Dubo." Lucian looked up, baffled. He hadn't called anyone. He couldn't afford a lawyer, let alone one in such a suit. "This is highly irregular, Mr. Rossi," Judge Logan noted. "The court wasn't informed." "A recent development, Your Honor," Rossi replied smoothly. "I request a brief recess to confer with my client." The judge studied Rossi, then Lucian, her expression unreadable. "The court will take a 15-minute recess," she announced, abruptly rising and retreating to her chambers. Lucian turned to the stranger. "I don't have money for a lawyer." "You don't need it," Rossi said calmly. "Williams, Rossi, and Logan is handling your case pro bono." Lucian frowned at the familiar name. "Logan? Like the judge?" "Exactly like the judge," Rossi confirmed. In her chambers, Judge Sophia Logan removed her glasses with trembling hands. 20 years on the bench had taught her to maintain composure, but nothing prepared her for this. "It can't be the same man," she murmured, though the details aligned too perfectly. She unlocked her desk drawer and pulled out a faded photo, a young Sophia beside her brother, Lieutenant Mark Logan, in his Marine uniform, both smiling at his commissioning ceremony. Next to it was Mark's last letter from Iraq, worn thin from rereading. It described a firefight near Fallujah, where his unit was pinned down. Without Gunnery Sergeant Dubo, Mark wrote, none of us would have made it. Dubo had run through heavy fire to reach a wounded Marine, then provided cover for their evacuation. 2 weeks after that letter, Mark died in an IED blast. Sophia remembered the funeral, the folded flag, and the Marine who approached her parents afterward. Your son saved my life, he'd said. I'm the one he pulled to safety. That Marine was Lucian Dubo. Sophia had tried to find him after the funeral, wanting to know more about her brother's final days. The Corps said he'd been redeployed immediately. Later, she learned he'd been honorably discharged after severe PTSD and a traumatic brain injury from his last tour. Now, 20 years later, he sat in her courtroom homeless, alone, unrecognized. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Antoine Rossi entered, looking concerned. Sophia, what's going on? As a former partner of Sophia's late husband and a family friend, he was one of the few who used her first name. It's him, she said, pointing to the photo. The Marine who saved Mark. The one who carried him through gunfire. Rossi's eyes widened. The homeless veteran in your courtroom, is that Dubo? The one you've been searching for? Sophia nodded. His military record confirms it. Fallujah, 2004. Same unit as Mark. Silver Star for the action Mark described. She paused, steadying herself. What happened, Antoine? How does a decorated Marine end up homeless in my courtroom for trying to stay warm? Rossi shook his head. From our brief talk, severe PTSD after his last tour. His wife left him while he was deployed. VA benefits got tangled in red tape. He worked construction until his injuries made it impossible. Then job loss, foreclosure, the street's a classic spiral. Sophia closed her eyes, recalling Mark's words. Dubo's the best of us. If I'm half the officer he is as an NCO, I'll consider myself a success. What do you want to do? Rossi asked. Could you recuse yourself? No, Sophia said firmly. I won't let him slip away again. I know the ethical considerations, but there's also ethics in how we treat those who sacrificed everything. When Judge Logan returned, her posture was impeccable, her expression neutral, though her hands trembled slightly. Mr. Rossi, has your client decided how to proceed? Rossi stood. Your Honor, we request dismissal of all charges. My client sought shelter from dangerous cold, a basic human need. We can also show he had implicit permission from the restaurant's staff to be there. The prosecutor began to object, but Judge Logan raised a hand, silencing him. I have questions for the defendant, she said, turning to Lucian. Mr. Dubo, your record shows service in Fallujah in 2004, correct? Lucian straightened slightly. Yes, Your Honor. 1 Battalion, 8th Marines. And on April 17, 2004, you were involved in an operation near the city's western suburbs? Confusion crossed Lucian's weathered face. Yes, ma'am. We were escorting a convoy when we took heavy fire. During that engagement, the judge continued, her voice steady, you saved a wounded Marine, Lieutenant Mark Logan, under enemy fire. The courtroom fell silent. Lucian's eyes narrowed, memory surfacing. Lieutenant Logan, he repeated slowly. Yes, young officer, good man. Got hit trying to reach a wounded corpsman. His gaze grew distant. I pulled him behind a wall, kept telling me to leave him, to get the others first. In the gallery, a silver-haired man in a Marine Corps League jacket leaned forward, rapt. And what happened to Lieutenant Logan? The judge asked, her professional mask intact, despite inner turmoil. We got him to medevac, Lucian said, his voice softening. Heard later he made it to Germany. Then, weeks later, I was back on patrol. His vehicle hit an IED. His voice broke. All these years, I've wondered if I did more harm than good, pulling him out just to die later. The silver-haired Marine stood, unable to contain himself. That's him, he shouted. Gunnery Sergeant Dubo. I was there that day. He saved 6 of us. Judge Logan struck her gavel once. Silence, she ordered, though her voice lacked its usual force. The room stilled, tension thick. Lucian stared at the floor, uneasy with the attention. The prosecutor interjected, Your Honor, while Mr. Dubo's service is admirable, it's irrelevant. The court disagrees, Judge Logan cut in. It's entirely relevant. She set her gavel aside. This court will take a 10-minute recess. Clerk, ensure Mr. Dubo remains in the courtroom. In her chambers, Sophia's composure crumbled. She pressed trembling fingers to her lips, Stifling emotions held for 2 decades. After several deep breaths, she picked up her phone. Colonel Matthews. Sophia Logan. I know it's been years. I need a favor, and I need it now. When Judge Logan returned, she wasn't alone. 3 Marines in dress uniforms followed. A colonel, a master sergeant, and a corporal carrying a polished wooden case. The courtroom stirred, murmurs rippling through the gallery. Lucian stood instinctively, muscle memory overriding his physical discomfort. Judge Logan took her seat and addressed the packed room, removing her glasses entirely, a first in her judicial career. Before proceeding, I must disclose a personal connection. As the name suggests, Lieutenant Mark Logan was my brother. A murmur swept the room. Lucian's eyes widened, recognition and confusion warring. 20 years ago, Sophia continued, my brother wrote about a gunnery sergeant who saved his life in Fallujah, a man who ran through enemy fire to reach him and provided cover for others to escape. That man was Lucian Dubo. The silver-haired Marine exclaimed, It's true, Your Honor. I was there. Dubo took 2 hits getting the lieutenant to safety. Sophia nodded. 2 weeks after that, my brother died in combat. At his funeral, Marines shared stories of Mark's courage and of the gunnery sergeant who saved him. We owe him 2 extra weeks with Mark, they said. She looked at Lucian. After Mark's death, I tried to find you, Sergeant Dubo. The Corps said you'd been redeployed. Years later, I learned you'd been discharged, but they couldn't share your whereabouts. Lucian stood motionless, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. I never stopped looking, Sophia said. And now, by what can only be fate or divine intervention, you're in my courtroom. She gestured to the colonel, who stepped forward. Colonel Jack Matthews, Mark's commander, she introduced. Do you have something to say? Matthews approached the bench. Gunnery, Sergeant Dubo, the Marine Corps has been trying to locate you for years. Your file was flagged under the Veterans Revaluation Initiative. New information from your service in Iraq and Afghanistan warranted a review of your decorations and benefit status. The corporal opened the wooden case, revealing a medal on a blue ribbon. By order of the Secretary of the Navy, for extraordinary heroism on April 17, 2004, the Navy Cross is awarded to Gunnery Sergeant Lucian J. Dubo, United States Marine Corps. The room gasped. The Navy Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor. Recently declassified information, Matthews explained, confirms your action saved Lieutenant Logan, 5 other Marines, and disrupted an ambush that could have destroyed the convoy. Your Silver Star has been upgraded accordingly. Lucian's stoic facade cracked. There's a mistake, he said hoarsely. I just did my job. No mistake, Sergeant, Matthews replied. This is long overdue. A voice in the gallery shouted, Attention on deck! The silver-haired Marine and others with military bearing stood, saluting Lucian. One by one, the entire room rose. Even the prosecutor, torn between protocol and decency, stood with visible respect. Sophia, tears streaming, addressed the court. In light of these circumstances, all charges against Gunnery Sergeant Lucian Dubo are dismissed with prejudice. She struck her gavel. Court adjourned. As formalities concluded, the Master Sergeant approached Lucian with a tablet. Sir, we've been trying to process your corrected VA benefits. Your disability rating has been reassessed at 100% service-connected, retroactive to your discharge. What does that mean? Lucian asked, overwhelmed. A substantial back payment, full medical coverage, housing allowance, and educational benefits if you choose, the sergeant replied. Rossi stepped forward. Our firm will ensure this is processed immediately, Mr. Dubo. No more bureaucratic delays. Etienne, the cook who left food for Lucian, approached, eyes wet. My father said a Marine saved his whole unit. If I ever meet a Lucian Dubo, I owe him everything. I never realized it was you. The prosecutor, visibly moved, also approached. Mr. Dubo, I had no idea. Please accept my apologies for how this was handled. Lucian stood amid the sudden attention, his dignity returning moment by moment, as if the weight of unrecognized honor had lifted. Sophia stepped down from the bench, abandoning judicial distance. My brother wrote what you told him when you saved him. No Marine left behind while I breathe. Today, Sergeant Dubo, we finally honor that promise to you. 2 weeks later, Lucian stood before a mirror in an apartment he still couldn't believe was his. The VA's housing program had fast-tracked his case, placing him in a one-bedroom unit for formerly homeless veterans. The walls were bare except for a frame, his newly awarded Navy Cross, displayed beside his original Purple Hearts and service medals, recovered by Rossi from a storage unit auctioned years ago. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Sophia Logan stood in the hallway, no judicial robe, holding a small box. "May I come in, Sergeant Dubo?" Lucian invited her in, still uneasy with his new reality. "Just Lucian, Your Honor." "Then I'm just Sophia," she replied, smiling. "At least outside my courtroom." They sat in the small living room, the weight of their unique bond lingering. "I brought something," Sophia said, opening the box and pulling out a bundle of letters. "They're from Mark. He wrote home every week during his deployment." She handed Lucian a letter. "This one mentions you, written the day after you saved him." Lucian's hands trembled as he unfolded it. Mark's handwriting was clear, precise, as Lucian remembered from field reports. "Mom, Dad," he read aloud, "don't worry about the news. I'm fine, thanks to my NCO, Gunnery Sergeant Dubo. He did something yesterday I still can't believe. When our unit was hit, he ran through fire that should have cut anyone down. He wouldn't leave me, even when I ordered him to, saying no Marine would be left behind on his watch." Lucian's voice wavered. "He wrote about you often," Sophia said softly. "Said you were the Marine he aspired to be." "He was a good officer," Lucian replied. "Young, but cared about his men. That's rare. After losing Mark, I went to law school," Sophia said. The Veterans Court program I started. The housing initiative, it began because of what Mark wrote about you, about how the system sometimes fails its heroes." Lucian looked away, uneasy with the praise. "I'm no hero, just did what needed doing." "That's what heroes always say," Sophia replied gently. She hesitated, then continued. "There's more. The day Mark died, he was leading a patrol to find an insurgent cell targeting civilians. He volunteered for it. His last letter said he was trying to live up to the example you set." That hit Lucian harder than any physical blow. For 20 years, he'd carried survivor's guilt, wondering if saving Mark only delayed the inevitable, if his efforts were futile. "He didn't die because of you," Sophia said, reading his thoughts. "He lived as he did because of you." They sat in silence. Two people bound by loss and honor across decades. Outside, snow fell softly, blanketing the city. Finally, Lucian spoke, barely audible. "All those years on the streets, I thought no one remembered. That none of it mattered." "It mattered," Sophia assured him. "To Mark, to your Marines, to me." As she prepared to leave, Sophia placed a hand on Lucian's shoulder. "Mark said a Marine's measure isn't what he does when everyone's watching, but when no one is. You lived that truth, even when the world looked away." Lucian stood taller than he had in years, a quiet dignity returning. "Someone remembered my name," he said simply. "After all this time, someone remembered." In that quiet moment, something long broken began to heal, not just for Lucian Dubo, but for all touched by his unsung honor. Some save others from death, only to live forgotten. Honor doesn't demand glory. Sometimes a single moment of recognition is enough to help someone stand tall again. No one should be left behind. Everyone deserves to be heard and respected. If you agree, comment "respect" to stand for kindness and justice. Subscribe to Stories Vision for more stories that touch the heart.